is that you want to be able to tackle.
Before you get into that, I want to actually get into the origin of Geekset, because we haven't even talked about that at all yet. We've been chopping it up,
we've been
getting into it really nice.
We've been doing what we're supposed to be doing.
So what questions you have about the origins?
Who started it? When did y'all get started? How did y'all evolve? All of that good stuff. But let's start off with who had the idea.
So I did.
Okay.
So again, I keep on, I use me being a fan of a lot of things that kind of move me into kind of what I want to do. I'm a person, my parents definitely instilled in me that you can do whatever you want to do in life, just as long as you commit and do it, as long as ain't nothing crazy, right? Mm-hmm. So when podcasts start popping off at first, because again, my first love is hip hop. I am a hip hop historian. I love hip hop, and I wanted to do a podcast about hip hop. But at the time, I couldn't get any of my homies to do a podcast myself. A podcast with me. And at that moment, I was like, I don't really want to do a podcast by myself. I kind of, saying this is when, like I said, the I'll Name This Podcast Later was first out. So that was the Joe Budden podcast before it was. I was loving that. This is when Deezus and Mero was going crazy. Tax Stone had his podcast. So it was I was loving that era of hip hop podcasts. And I was like, oh, I want to bring my contribution to it. So as much as I cape for like blurred culture, my cape was Midwest hip hop. Like I love hip hop, all cultures of it, but I was like, I wanted to help amplify the voice of Midwest hip hop to the point where I used to run an online radio station called The Real Midwest Radio and everything like that. It was the sister station to Dirty South Radio online. So it was like, it was just something that I used to do. But
go. I'm so, bro, no, you can't just drop that and be like, hey, yo, I used to run
a lot of stuff.
You have done everything, but go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So at the time, I was like, all right, well, I guess I ain't gonna do a podcast. But I kept on wanting to still do a podcast. So a couple of years go by, and then podcasting still evolving, and still not to this point. But I was like, all right, there was so many hip hop podcasts. I was like, all right, what can I bring to this podcast space? And I was like, what else do I feel that I love a lot, or that I can talk a lot about where I won't get tired of? And I was like, you know what? I really love this geek culture, comic books, anime, video games. And the light bulb moment was the very, very first trailer of Black Panther came out. And in that very, very first trailer, they used Run the Jewels as the soundtrack too. Now, and every geek podcast that I was watching, nobody highlighted the fact that this dope ass hip hop crew, this is like an underground hip hop crew, but kind of mainstream. Run the Jewels was on the very, very first Black superhero movie. I mean, first Marvel Black one. Let's say shout out to Blade, but the very, very first, Marvel, Disney, major MCU Black movie. I said nobody is talking about this aspect, and I said that's what I wanted to be. I want to be able to talk about hip hop and geek culture and how they intertwine with each other, right? So I did at the time, my guy, he had like a little small podcast network within Milwaukee, saying called the Urban Mogul Lounge. So I was like, all right, well, I can probably have a home there, but I was like, but let me figure this out. So I put out a Facebook post and I said, look, I want to do a podcast around hip hop and geek culture. Anybody interested, let me know. And the one thing that I knew about podcasting that I didn't want to do is I didn't want to have to take the time to learn a new host. So when people was tagging some of my people that I knew, they tagged my guy Lib, was a producer in Milwaukee, and then Bacardi. And so once they tagged them, I was like, well, shit, I know them. I did music with them. I was on the album. I was like, this would be easy. So we linked up together. We got together. We put some steaks on the grill, and then we brainstormed about what this is going to be. And so I wish we had that original moment where we was trying to map out the names, because we was going over all dope hip hop groups and trying to geekify the name. Yeah. And somehow we landed on Geekset, which was obviously a derivative of Dipset. Right? Mm-hmm. And so it was like, man, that's it. So the very, very first iteration of Geekset, we was just audio. And I do graphic design. So what I did was episode 1 up until probably episode 128 is that I would alter mixtape covers, the Dipset album mixtape covers. Yeah. And I would put our faces. So let's say if we're talking about Dragon Ball Z, and Demon Slayer on this episode. It'll be our faces, but Goku as well, but in like the mix. And you can find those online in those early episodes of audio. It was just mixtape covers of us and just anime and geek stuff and everything like that. So that was like our thing. We would do that, you know what I'm saying, try to build some traction. We used to start off with the Dipset anthem. And at that point, we really just wanted to show that niggas like this culture, right? That was like really like our mantra. We was definitely really, really like ragtagging, like kind of like we was wilding, right? But then when things started feel like, oh, we actually got something here. That's when we started taking it serious. We got an original beat. We started, you know what I'm saying, taking it and everything like that. And then we was like, all right, let's figure out our aesthetic and who we are. And then so we started doing a little bit of live stuff, and we started doing WakandaCon. This is when Black Panther first came out. They had a WakandaCon in Chicago, and that was our very, very first live. So we went down to Chicago, did that, and that's when we was like kind of mapped out how we do our lives. I was like, I don't want the door to be shut. I was like, nobody knows who we are. So I was like, let's keep that door open. And our regular banter I felt so good about our regular banter that people are going to hear it and start coming in. And so they put us in a room that probably held like 75. And at that time, I think we filled it up to like 45. So that was a huge for us. For our first, like, oh shit, we got something here, right? And so we wanted to start doing more and more of that. And so we started kind of like trying to polish the podcast, started to do a little bit more, do more live events. And then we started going to those like Anime Milwaukee. We had Wisconsin Comic-Con here, Anime Milwaukee, and then another one called MightyCon. And we did Wisconsin Comic-Con first. And that's when we was bringing out like the camera and everything, interviewing people. And that's when I kind of got like the knack of, oh, I want to talk to people. So my first big interview was at MightyCon, and this is more so just like a comic book swap meet convention, like one of those. It wasn't like a convention, literally just vendors, right? But this is how green. I mean, how green we definitely was with this. It was like, all right, we gonna live podcast at the event, not knowing what this event's going to be or anything. So they put us at a table, and it's just all these people. We had wireless mics, and we literally. Like it's funny because we just going out there just talking to people while they trying to buy comic books. So a lot of the audio is you hear people negotiating like, all right, man, I give you $3 for that. No, it's 15. All right, what about this? And it's like, hey, so yeah, man, you like DC, right? Everything like that. But this is where I feel like the universe speaks to you. They put right next to us was Steve Cardenas, the Red Ranger. The second Red Ranger, right? So big Mighty Morphin Power Ranger fan. And I noticed it and I said, I'm gonna interview him. I didn't know how to approach him or anything like that. So I was like, let's just be us. We just gonna make sure that we be lit and he's gonna want to come over here. So we was doing our thing, having fun. Fighter Z at first just came out. So my guy Liv, he was more of a gamer. He bought a little TV. So he challenging people playing Fighter Z on the floor and everything. Like it was a time. So at one point we took a little break, and then Steve Cardenas pulled up to the side like, hey, so what is this? And we was like, oh yeah, we Geekset. The Geekset podcast, the only podcast that blend hip hop culture and geek culture together. You know what I'm saying? He was like, oh yeah, this is dope. I was like, we would love to interview. He's like, sure. And then without even prepping him, I'm like, all right, what up? This dude sits for the Geekset podcast. I got Steve Cardenas here. And he goes, go, Geekset Ranger. And I said,
done.
Oh my God. I said, yeah.
Got it in one.
Oh, that is priceless, man.
At that point, I was like, yo, this is what we doing. We are nerd reporters. We are reporting on the culture. Let's do this podcast. We took it serious. We started doing it. Later on, I brought in my brother Didge so we get off on tangents as we see here.
Have no idea what you're talking about.
Right. And I wanted to get somebody to bring us in. My brother, my younger brother Didge, he's always been kind of like the straight guy, you know, the guy that still keep people on time. So what I had thought bringing him in, because he was just supposed to be our audio engineer, was that, right? And he was going to bring us in and everything like that. What it was about Endgame. When Endgame came out, this is when Didge made his debut. We talk about Endgame, and Didge like, hey, no, I gotta talk on this one. So we put a mic on his intro. It used to be Didge in the booth. So when we do our intros, Bacardi, Lib, Didge in the booth, and then at some point, because again, Didge is more. He is definitely our technical person, but he's also our more structured person. So he started reaching out to people. I don't know how this happened, but he ended up getting into contact with Earwolf, and Earwolf was like,
they were
Black voices for Black History Month, and we want to celebrate Geekset. And so Didge was like, "Well, we got to capitalize off this. Let's shoot video with this." And I was like, "All right, bet, but we don't got no camera." Just like, don't worry about it. He invested. He got a Black Magic camera right out the gate. And so he was like, I was like, oh shit. So that's why I was like, oh shit, my brother's serious about this.
Come on, man.
Well, no. We got to go to the next level. We got something here. Like you said, y'all got something here.
Yeah. And so we shot the video, and that was our Earwolf episode. But then since then, Did's been on camera, and he's been more so any aesthetic that you see, like audio or video, that's all Didge. He handles all that. But he's the one that been making sure that we get our video on, make sure we got us on video, and that kind of changed the course of Geekset. And then the next biggest milestone part that kind of changed the course was when COVID hit, because we started going to these conventions, started doing more of this, and we was like, all right, we don't want to lose the traction and momentum that we've been building here, because everybody was sitting down. And so I was like, all right, well, here's what I'm gonna do. I said, I still watch a lot of these podcasts, consume a lot of these people's content. I said, I want to learn and have long form content conversations with these people. And so I was like, I'm gonna reach out to some of these people and see if we can have conversations about them while we still do digital, Zoom podcasting. So my very, very first interview was with the hip hop artist Mickey Fax. Now, within music, I've done music with Mickey Fax. I got a music video out with him, and so I know that he's a big gamer, hip hop head. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna start off with him, and we was talking about everything. And that episode went wrong in every way possible. This is my first time using Zoom. I forgot to turn it off of grid. I forgot to turn it off of speaker mode. So, and the way I have it, I wanted to just have me here and him here. So, bro, that editing took forever, because when I was talking, it went straight to me full screen. So what I had to do was, every time I'm talking on his screen, I had to put a picture of him. And every time he's talking, I had to put a picture of me. And I had to go back and forth throughout that. I had to edit that whole episode like that. But it turned out dope, because within that was like, I immediately was able to get traction with that, because he told a story about how this Street Fighter game was supposed to happen between him, Just Blaze, Hit Boy, Lupe Fiasco, Joe Budden, and it never happened. And he said because they were scared. So I clipped it, put it out there, and I wake up the next morning and it's Joe Budden, Just Blaze, Mickey Fax, Neo, Hit Boy, all arguing on Twitter about this Street Fighter match. Like, no, we can get in it right now. What you talking about? And I was like, yo, this is all came from my podcast. And I was like, yo, this was really dope. And I was like, I want to continue to do that. So me, I'm a person that I shoot my shot with people. I'm like, I shoot my digital shot, right? And so I was like, all right, another person whose content I've been consuming a whole lot for years is Wesley Was Good Armstrong. And I'm like,
yeah, Wes.
I'm like, yo, Wes is dope. And I was like, I wonder if I can get him on. Reached out to him. He jumped on. He was episode 2. And then I was like, all right, I also consume Timothy De La Ghetto stuff. Let me see if I can get him on. Reached out to him, got him on. And I was like, oh, this is all right. We got something here. So I was like, I'm going to do an interview every Saturday, you know what I'm saying, and try to get it. And I kept on building. And then what kicked the door wide open was, and this is go back to my music thing. One of the DJs that I met way back when was a DJ named DJ Crystal Bubbling. She's out of New York. She later on in life became an actress, right? And
wait, why does her name? No, her name legit like actually sounds familiar. But go ahead.
Listen, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't know her. But she was in there was a documentary about the McDonald's monopoly. You know what I'm saying? And she played one of the characters in there, and they're like retelling of it and everything like that. So I'm like, oh, bet, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, all right, bet. So let me go ahead and no, take it back. So connect with her. She's been one of my supporter of my music and everything as long as I can think of, right? So as I'm interviewing people, you know what I'm saying, I get down, like I reached out to Gene Ellie from Insecure, was able to get him. Reached out to Van Lathan, was able to get him. I'm like, it was really dope traction. So I had a list, and this is why one of my tattoos is kind of like a no-face black woman, because there's black women in my life always seem to have came around and like angel wings blessed me and helped me out in ways that I can't even express. So because there's so many strong Black women in my life, that's what I got tattooed on me. And I always say in creation and for where I'm at is one of those people, because as I was interviewing people, again, I'm watching all this all that content. I'm like, man, I would love to get Kev on. And I'm reaching out to the right necessary channels. And I'm like, it's not working. And then Kev started his Kev on Stage Studios app. And I just so happened to see Crystal Bubbling pop up on that app with him, because they was doing the improv show. And she's the host of the improv show. And so I'm like, oh, shit, this is my homie. All right. So I'm like, all right. So I hit up Crystal. I'm like, hey, Crystal, I'm hat in hand. Hey, I got a little question I want to ask you real quick. She's like, well, I'm like, so you, how cool are you with like Kev? She was like, oh, Kev, that's my guy. I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, all right. So I'm like, I'm still beating around the bush. And she flat out was like, nigga, what you want? I was like, I don't want to interview Kev. She's like, all right. She hit him up. Probably like 4 hours later, Kev emailed me like, all right, what's good? You know what I'm saying? And so I'm like, yo, and that Kev on Stage interview opened up the door for all of All Def to come through, all the comedians to come through, and things just started going crazy from there as far as interview-wise go.
I love it.
Dude, you've been on the street, like whatever. This is what people say. If something is meant for you, it will happen. And you are the personification of that. Bruh, on top of the fact that you are a good human fucking being is stellar. I root for you consistently and always in everything that you fucking do, because please, I need more of you out in the universe. It doesn't have to all be clickbait and pinning one person against one another. No, you can actually just celebrate people and chit chat, shoot the shit without it having to turn into something negative. I love you.
Yeah.
I heart you like so much.
Notice there's no gatekeeping in any of our stories.
No, and with my platform, that's the main thing that I was like, I realized and I started seeing that within the podcast space that it does become clickbaity, right? And I said, I'd rather the clickbait be something positive, right?
Yeah.
Versus, you know what I'm saying? Because I realized I'm like, I've had people on my platform in the midst of controversy, and I'm like, I'm not going to ask that. I don't want that. I'd rather people be happy about. I rather who I interview also be happy about the interview. I don't want them to be ashamed, like, damn, I said something I want to say. But also, I like my viral clips to be something of discovery.